if you look back at them all, no matter who directed them, from Julian Schnabel to Gary Ross to Iñárritu and Spike and Bennett Miller and even the Hunger Games, there, to me at least, seems to be some kind of continuity in that they're all about people. They're all very, human, dramatic stories.
Welcome to another episode of the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. I'm Chris Bush.
And I'm Dean Slider.
On the Filmosophers, we talk about film and filmosophy with the people who make and who love the movies. And we are thrilled to have as our guest today, independent producer Jon Kilik, who has collaborated with really an amazing list of esteemed directors in a long career, directors such as Spike Lee, Julian Schnabel, Alejandro Iñárritu, Oliver Stone. His film credits include Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, Basquiat, Pollock, Dead Man Walking, and the Hunger Games series. Jon, welcome to the Filmosophers.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you both for having me. I'm very excited to be here to share stories, talk film, and hopefully inspire people to follow the path and keep making movies. That's what it's all about. I want to just try to keep people engaged and involved, whether they're filmmakers or film audiences who love film like we do.
You got your start behind the camera doing production work early on, films such as Raising Arizona, Crocodile Dundee, Prizzi's Honor. How did you get started in the business?
Well, I went to college up in Burlington, Vermont after leaving my home state of New Jersey after high school. About halfway through the University of Vermont, part of that liberal arts curriculum included communication, art, film, public speaking, creative writing, and filmmaking, both film history and film production. So after graduating, I thought maybe this is something I could try to get into. I didn't know what, maybe as a camera operator or in some other fashion. I also thought parallel to that I would try to work on my own storytelling as a writer and potentially director, producer. I had written and directed a couple of shorts in my filmmaking classes, and thought maybe that's something I could develop further. So I moved after working at a TV station in Burlington for about 6 or 8 months after graduating. I then moved to New York with something on my resume, both my degree and a little bit of experience at the Burlington television station. Moved to New York and started to pursue both work for other people at entry-level positions as a production assistant and work on my own thing to develop my own skills as potentially a screenwriter, producer, director. So that's where I started. As you mentioned, some of those jobs on other people's films turned into really interesting projects, because now we're into the middle 80s, and it was a very creative time in New York, and there was a lot of independent feature work going on. Well-known directors were making feature films almost every year. Woody Allen, Scorsese, Sidney Lumet, Alan Pakula. And then my own generation, like you said, the Coen brothers started out right after college, and Spike Lee started out right after he got out of NYU. So these are people that were in my age range. And New York was a networking system for me. So worked on other people's films and got credits, got my own thing going and got a credit there, and then met the other people who were trying to do the same thing, like the Coen brothers and Spike, after 5 or 6 years of my own development and making my own movie. So that's pretty much the genesis of it.
Was the meeting and collaboration with Spike Lee really a turning point in terms of propelling you, or was there another point you could look at as being really pivotal in kind of your career trajectory?
Well, many things that led up to that got me there, because I met Spike, I'd say about, almost 8 or 9 years after moving to New York. So I had 8 or 9 years, just as he did as well, post undergrad. We were both in New York City for those 8 or 9 years, learning and developing our own material and working on other people's projects or having jobs for other companies. So by the time I met him, I was ready for the meeting. You can't just meet somebody like that at that time and have him select you for no reason. It just, the meeting itself, of course, was a great opportunity, but you have to take advantage of that opportunity. And I only could have if I had the experience. So I had many things that led up to that meeting with Spike that were also kind of, kismet and great timing and luck and opportunity that I took advantage of and developed from, so that by the time I met Spike, I was ready for the meeting.
Gotcha. You've produced, I think, maybe 14 of his films.
I think it's up to 16 now.
It's 16
maybe.
now.
Yeah.
And I think you've produced multiple films for other great auteurs, Jim Jarmusch, Iñárritu, Oliver Stone, Gary Ross. The fact that you have had kind of a long relationships with these people and continuing relations with professionally, I would imagine that kind of the fundamentals of respect, of integrity, keeping faith with one's word, supporting the artist and getting them what they need, that those are kind of the cornerstones. But would you share with us a little bit about the life of the producer and what you feel you've brought to your work that's kind of made it your own?
That's a really good question. And thanks for also, giving the context of how important it is to be not just supportive for the sake of it, but really committed to it and believing in it and fighting for somebody else's voice or the collaboration of our voices together. I could only do that if I did believe in it wholeheartedly. So the films that I chose to work on, the people that I met and stuck with, are all people and films that I really value and love, and I want to work hard for, I want to fight for, I do believe in. And whether they succeed or fail at the box office doesn't matter. I'm still wholeheartedly in it and committed to it. So that's part of what's become, I guess, my style, to answer that part of your question. It really takes that kind of commitment, because it's not a 9-to-5 job. So you're in it 24/7 oftentimes. And when you work that way and you have people's trust and respect, I trust and respect them, but they have to trust and respect me as well. And that has to be earned. So that's earned through my own work style, my own attitude, the way I communicate, the choices I make, the instincts that I've developed and have, my taste. And it doesn't take long for another, even a director who I haven't worked with, to pick up on those things and say, oh, wow, there's something here that I don't see from other producers. Not that there's anything wrong with or that it's less important. But a lot of producers might have a more specific role that is less connected to a partnership with a director. Maybe they're investors or financiers or studio executives, and they have some sort of green light ability, but then they let the director go off on his own with his team. I have to do a little bit of both. I've got to help secure the financing because most of the films that I do are self-generated, so they're not studio productions, both for the most part. I have to creatively partner with a director to develop the story and have it filmed in the right locations and with crew and all the things that that have to be invented kind of organically and in a unique way. There's no rule book for them, for those choices and how to do things that way. So yeah, it's that's my way of working, my style. You kind of invent it as you go and solve problems as you go and do the things for the movie that the movie needs in order to get made. And it's a series of things that, some of which you just can't teach. And I only learned myself by, the 10,000 hour rule and repeating, experience and getting deeper and deeper into all kinds of different films and, having, again, my own way of working. Everybody has a unique style. Every director works a different way. Every producer works a different way.
John, I would imagine that there's a particular challenge of working with, some directors, and particularly some of the brilliant directors that you've worked with. Seems to me they're the modern day equivalent of a Beethoven or a James Joyce, and highly creative people like that, can be not necessarily always the easiest people to work with or to live with. Seems to me that for you to work smoothly with all of those folks, there's got to be a particular gene involved.
Yeah. I mean, they certainly can have their choice of who to work with, and part of the repeat business element of this has to do with they have there's a comfort level because they could work with anybody,
right?
So yeah, there's got to be, it's a relationship, it's a compatibility, it's the mutual respect that we have been talking about, it's the work ethic, it's the taste, so but there's also just a chemistry there that because a lot of it is we're in the trenches working, but then we're also kind of cohabitating in a way. So there's just the you got to have the personality that fits in and that can be assertive when you need to be, but be quiet when you need to be. Sometimes it's about not going overboard. Sometimes it's about being thoughtful and patient, and if you don't have the answer right away, you can say, let me find out, or let me look into that. So there are a lot of ways that you develop your personality and you have that relationship. But a lot of the directors, as varied as they seem, they're all, like you say, very high level, but they also all they're compatible. If this was a dating app, we'd all get along. There are other directors who I might not, they're a little bit more action driven or intense in a different way these are all intense in a very humanistic and soulful and spiritual way, and that tends to be how I go.
I was just interested to know how much kind of a spiritual, simpatico, intuitive connection kind of informs the relationships and the choice of the projects and the execution as it goes along. Is there something is there kind of that's something you can't put your finger on that exists with you and the artist and the project, that when this feels right, this is the sweet spot?
Yeah, I think that it's, I didn't design it. You could never predict what movies you're going to make. I don't know which one is going to be next. So I couldn't have known any of these before they happened. They all are made up, and they didn't exist before we got involved with trying to get them made. So that being said, if you look back at them all, no matter who directed them, from Julian Schnabel to Gary Ross to Iñárritu and Spike and Bennett Miller, and even the Hunger Games, there, to me at least, seems to be some kind of continuity in that they're all about people. They're all very, human, dramatic stories. Again, even the Hunger Games is really about a sister protecting her little sister and her family, and fighting her way through the arena and the capital, and she comes from poverty, and she's fighting through the wealth and the games that are being created by this 1%. You can say all those things about Foxcatcher, a movie I did with Bennett Miller about two brothers, and the DuPont heir, John DuPont, Steve Carell's character. Steve Carell and that character, it could be President Snow, and Mark and Dave Schultz could be the Everdeens, Katniss and Prim. It really is, I know it's a pretty big reach to say that, but in a way, there is a connection. So, and there's a connection, I think, through all the films, going back to Do the Right Thing, Dead Man Walking, Broken Flowers, a lot of Spike's films, and a lot of the films of Julian Schnabel. And come to think of it, even Pleasantville has this brother-sister story where they're brought into this alternate universe. So you could link that as well to Hunger Games and Foxcatcher. So all of these movies, I think, speak to each other, but none of them could have been planned or predicted. So I found them, they found me. Some we developed on our own. Some existed from books and other material. And, sometimes I'll even say after the fourth Hunger Games, for example, oh, I could use a break. And then a movie showed up called Thank You for Your Service, a very small movie about 4 soldiers who come back from Afghanistan, and they're suffering from PTSD. And, it was dealing with things that I really wanted to get into it. And again, some of those elements are in the Hunger Games, but they couldn't be more different when they're told in Thank You for Your Service. So I do get attracted to and want to learn about things that I want to learn about. I want to tell stories about things that I want to, bring out to the world. So this is not a job. I don't just take a job. I can't work that way. I would have to do things that I love, because when you commit 2 or 3 or 5 years or more, to getting a film made. You better love it, and you better want to, spend a lot of time with it and learn about it.
But I would just say, as a film fan, your level of artistic discrimination, uh, you say, you tend to compliment people you agree with, I think, in life, right? And I'm such a fan of so many of these films. And of course, they're made by these great filmmakers. And, they're not all, I'm sure, critical successes or box office successes. And I'm curious about that because I think, in the old days, the studios made the movies and put up the money. And then you got to the age of the independent producer. And I think of like Sam Spiegel putting up the money for Lawrence of Arabia and keeping an eye on the budget. And when it got to be, time, he got on the phone with David Lean. He said, wrap it up. Right. And nowadays it's the independent producer. And you mentioned you arrange the financing. How do you balance that artistic and commercial, tension? How does that play out?
Well, you really do, at least in my opinion, you have to value and protect and appreciate and fight for your investor just as much as you value, appreciate, and fight for your own film and your director. It can't work if it's a one-way street, because if you work that way, then you're not going to be able to go back to that well. So you've got to wear that hat too, where you're constantly informing and hand-holding with the studio or the investor to make sure that they share in your vision. They're committed to the cause or the ideas of the script as you are, and they also see you as being responsible. So you're not indulging, you're not asking for more than you need. You're doing things in an efficient manner financially. And then whether it makes money or not, at least it's been done responsibly.
Yeah.
Jon, is there a story you can tell us about a specific film you were working on where, some kind of problem needed to be solved that the survival of the film, the making of the film hinged on, that called for the producer, called for you to do the thing that only you could do with the hat that you were wearing? Just to give us a feeling for how in real life and specifics, how this works.
Well, yeah, that could manifest itself in several different ways, and I can think of several different versions of that. Mainly in pre-production, even when you have a really great script and a great director and some actors and a plan, if you don't bridge that kind of relationship and the numbers and whatever else between what either a studio or the marketplace in general is saying, they might say, we'll invest in the movie, but only to this point. And if you and your director think, well, we need more than that, the movie's just not going to happen unless you intervene and say, okay, can we meet somewhere in the middle, or we'll come down, you come up, or okay, we'll just come down to what you say and we'll take it, or we'll make adjustments to the script or to the production plan, or shoot in a different place, or give back our own, whatever the series of things that you have to do to bridge that gap and make that work. That's a very important part of producing. Then also, before the shoot starts, there could be things that happen that kind of mess up the game plan. Maybe an actor drops out and the director is discouraged and upset and feels like he just can't make the movie now. You've got to get in there and come up with a solution and a new idea that's going to be a better idea, a better version of the film, and get him comfortable or her comfortable with that. And, you know, there are constantly going to be obstacles during your pre-production that could frustrate you, the director, your team, the financier, and you're the one who has to keep everybody confident and on board, because it's very easy, and for multiple reasons, it's movies can fall apart, or people can say no, or elements change, or an actor has something happen and can't do it, or the financier at the last minute gets cold feet and they want to drop the commitment by X amount of dollars. That happens all the time, and it's really up to the producer to be, you know, flexible enough and problem solve enough to, you know, navigate through that and figure it out. And when they're thrown all these, you know, changes, curveballs.
Do things ever go as planned?
Sure. You know, mainly during the shoot, which everybody thinks of as the most difficult time. But I mean, obviously during the shoot, there are always changes. Anything can happen. It can rain and you got to go to a cover set, or you have to make up something or change an idea or a script or what have you, rehearsals, or reveal something about the story, or I mean, if it all went exactly as planned, what's the point? Because then it's kind of like the movie was already made. If it doesn't change and evolve and hopefully grow and change for the better, what's the point? If it's all been so clearly illustrated in advance that it happens exactly that way, it kind of, you know, would be pretty boring. So in a way, you want to say, I hope it doesn't all go as planned, but you still want it to all go and get better than planned, even with things that happen that might seem like they are negatives or disappointments. I can give you so many examples of that.
But you must be pretty happy with the end product. So many of the films are so wonderful, and you know, to have the reinforcement of critical acclaim when the film comes out. Does it get to you if it doesn't reach a positive critical reception? Do you watch the film with an audience? Do you see it on your own? How do you relate to the finished product?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm usually 100% or close to 100% happy with the movie. There are always things that, I'd maybe still fix this or that. But for the most part, you know, always want the movie to be, and we don't finish it until it is the best version of itself. And to find that out, one of the things that we like to do is to show it to an audience and make sure they are understanding it, or that it's, you know, that important things about it are clear, and you know, other things that you just feel in the room when you see it with an audience. It's different than watching it by yourself. So yeah, that's important to do before you lock picture and finish fully.
So you'll do test screenings and get some feedback. And
yeah, we're not really testing necessarily for points or what have you, but I guess that can come into play. But you know, some of the highest rated films got mediocre test scores. It's not, you know, because some of these movies are designed to be complicated. They're designed to not answer every question. So the testing scores will often ask if everything's clear and everything is buttoned up, and the answer has to be no, sometimes with a very good film, because that's the intention. So it's not really about the scores always. It's really about a feeling in the room, and kind of the you know, the respect that it might get from the audience. Some of these things are difficult movies to say, oh, I love this film. It made me laugh and cry, and you know, took me to another time and space, escaped from reality. they don't always do that.
But you get to ask the questions, the answers to which you care about understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you, I'm interested to know, the Hunger Games franchise was a huge success, commercial success too. You had worked with Gary Ross on Pleasantville. Did he bring the project to you, or did you get involved through some other avenue?
No, Gary and I had worked on Pleasantville. We were working on some other projects of his original screenplays. He started as a writer. Pleasantville was the first movie he directed. And we were working on other projects of his. And he called me up one day and said, "We're going to put those down. There's something I want you to read. And I love it. My kids gave it to me, and it's fantastic. It's owned by Lionsgate and has people already involved. They're looking for a director, and I'm going to, I want to pursue this." And he had to fight for the job. They were interviewing other directors and looking for somebody to take it on. But the franchise itself wasn't really a franchise yet, and there was no Jennifer Lawrence yet. There was a book that every studio in Hollywood had passed on.
Oh, really?
And it ended up at Lionsgate because there really wasn't any other home for it. They were not the first place that the author and the other producer went to. Yeah, that's because it's a young adult novel, but it's also very edgy and had violence. And, the 24 kids enter the arena, 23 of them die. How are they going to sell that to a PG-13 audience? So there was a lot of trepidation from the studios about that. And the first draft that was written was very true to that story. When Gary went in and pitched him as the right person, part of it was the tone that he was going to bring to it. And it did not rely on the violence. It relied on the humanity and the relationships and the social issues and even the politics a little bit, but especially the personal human relationships. And that was sort of music to Lionsgate's ears because they were a little bit afraid of the possible R rating. So Gary fought for the job, he got the job, and then he set the tone of the film his way. And his way was a little bit, less violent and a little bit more humanistic. And that worked, obviously, very well. And casting Jennifer was also, not so easy to think of or even push through because she wasn't exactly how the character in the book was written physically. And, there were things about, any studio looks for bankability. And even though Jennifer had done Winter's Bone and received an Oscar nomination, we had to fight very hard for her to have the part. And we were only going to make the movie with her. It was, she gave a great reading. Her work from Winter's Bone could have been in itself an audition piece. We thought it was so right. She's from the area, coincidentally, which was the District 12 type of world, growing up in Kentucky. And there was just a chemistry there and a natural thing she brought to it that was so right.
And she knew how to hunt squirrels.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems to me it's got to be immensely satisfying when you have to fight that hard for something and then it works so well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Very true. Yeah.
She was your Al Pacino in The Godfather.
Well, there wasn't that much resistance. I mean, it was just a typical studio thing where, are you sure? And
Right.
we looked at everybody, and uh, but we, as they would carefully make sure of the lead in anything, and especially a young lead who uh, wasn't a star yet. So it was really just about that, but they trusted us.
And the commitment had not been made for the subsequent film. So you didn't know. Is that correct? You didn't know yet?
There was no guarantee yet. Obviously, everybody wanted to. The third book hadn't even been written yet.
Mm.
And I think when we started shooting, the second one had just come out. But yeah, if the first movie hadn't worked, uh, they may not have made the second one. But they contracted all the actors, especially, to be committed to the whole series. That's what you have to do when you cast people in a series. You've got to make a long-term commitment in writing.
Well, any film with Stanley Tucci and Woody Harrelson, sign me up.
Yeah, no, and I was so happy because they come from my independent filmmaking place of the New York indie films. It wasn't really the big franchise studio world. Everybody from the first Hunger Games through the last, you could say that too about the great Philip Seymour Hoffman, Julianne Moore. They all came out of the indie world, and we really shot the movies like they were independent, human story films that are similar again to the other things that Gary and I have done.
It was, I mean, to me, the supporting cast was really so much of it, and Elizabeth Banks and Donald Sutherland.
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
I forgot. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so great, so great.
I'm just so happy to hear the note that you keep coming back to, John, about film generally, which is that it's about human stories. Because it seems to me the trend that threatens to make films not anything that I'm interested in watching, and films that are a lifelong passion for me, the things that threaten it is this tendency to really eliminate the human element, and just to make it some kind of fancy, pinball machine roller coaster ride.
Yeah. That's what all of the things that I do are. If they don't work on that level, then they're not going to work. And if they do work on that level, there's no limit to how much they can succeed and how big an audience they can speak to.
We have a short list of some of your favorite films, which we'd like to talk about, because it seems to me they all have that element so strongly. Near the top of the list is, top of my list, On the Waterfront, which is a film I can watch every day. Tell me about what's going on in that film that speaks so strongly to you.
Oh wow! Those moral choices, that moral dilemma of again, it's there's a brotherhood story in there as well. There's the what gives our lives meaning part to it, and do you stand up and take a risk and go against the the powers that be? And those are all, again, I think, things we've been talking about throughout this conversation that are embedded in the choices I've made, the films I've made, and they're certainly a big part of that movie of On the Waterfront.
The whole final sequence, with Marlon Brando as this just kind of well, first, the incredibly beautiful, youthful Marlon Brando, and just this kind of, it's really like the real passion of the Christ going on there, you know, and it's so moving and so cinematic, and everyone is so good. Rod Steiger is so good. Lee J. Cobb is so good. Eva Marie Saint and Carl Malden. Boy, if you can get a cast like that, that's just,
Yeah.
seems like you could do
And
almost
you
anything.
can't take for granted the music. The score that's written for that film really heightens the emotion throughout the movie. The cinematography is great, and the composition of shots and the mood and tone and aesthetic of the movie is, you know, it all works together.
Yeah, just and it's so magical, and sometimes it just all gels and you get it to work. And you know, a little known fact in cinema history is the sequel to Casablanca. You know, Casablanca, which is like, you know, maybe the greatest example of all those elements working, where it's complete movie magic. And then they try to do it again with I think it's called Brazzaville, and it's just nothing.
Same cast?
I don't remember. I think so. I think not all of them. Some of the same cast, but it's they pick up from the, you know, the beginning of A Beautiful Friendship, the last line of Casablanca, where and they mention Bogey mentions there's this free French district in Brazzaville, and they're going to go there together and you know, fight the good fight.
Wow, didn't know that.
Yep.
You mentioned another favorite film, Martin Scorsese's 70s film Mean Streets, which I saw again in preparation for our conversation here. Share a little bit about that too. Did you see that when it first came out?
I didn't see it when it first came out. I probably saw it about 6 years later when I moved to New York after college. And yeah, it made a big impression because it was such a raw, honest, you know, I guess a low budget independent film, first feature. And, you know, from the first shot and then the first music cue, you're just, you know, that really spoke to me, my generation, my neighborhood, my musical tastes, my, you know, it was a new language of movie making that took those films that I loved from the 50s and early 60s and really, you know, reinvented or took it to a new place. And I think his use of music, especially cutting pattern, cinematography, and of course, you know, that group of actors in that world, and De Niro, Keitel, Amy Robinson, all brought this authenticity and this, you know, new wave of New York independent cinema, inspired by the Cassavetes and so many other great independent filmmakers that I guess led to this moment. But I found it to be a very transformative movie for me and very inspiring.
Yeah, you mentioned the rawness of it, and it, to me, that film feels like that the youthful creative energy of Scorsese and everyone, but it's as if Scorsese is driven by the feeling that, you know, he might never get to make another film again. And he just has to throw everything he's got into every scene.
Yeah, I think that's worked for him throughout his career. It's what makes all his movies, you know, so special and energized, because that's really how he approaches them all.
Yeah, that intensity.
There's a lot riding on it, and if it doesn't work, it might be the last time. No guarantee.
Right. Raising Arizona, to me, this is what making film is about. This is what you can't do in any other medium. And another film I can watch every day. And it gives me the feeling, even though it was not the Coen brothers' first film, to me it's got kind of a similar feeling of Mean Streets, in that they're just like clicking on all cylinders with every shot.
Yeah, that was one of those, I mean, very few perfect scripts. You read that script, and we talked earlier about how things evolve and grow and change. Well, that script was pretty much what you see. And it was pretty much, just perfectly executed as written. And yeah, brilliant on every level, but all about the conception in that script phase, and how they visualized it, and then executing that vision. It was amazing to be with them, be on the set for that process, and see how precise and particular every setup and every shot and every choice was. But yeah, I remember reading the script and was so moved by it and in awe of it and impressed by it that you just, you could feel it. Like, this is great writing.
On a shoot like that, is it a joyful environment on the set, or is it just all business?
Well, let's see. I mean, it was very joyful in the sense that Ethan and Joel kept that collaborative thing going, but not only between themselves, but between a core group of people who had worked with them in college or on their first movie, which was a very low budget independent called Blood Simple. So it was friends. It was a labor of love with friends behind the camera and in front of the camera. They wrote it for their friend Holly Hunter. They cast Fran McDormand, Joel's future wife. Behind the camera was Barry Sonnenfeld, who was a friend and maybe even a classmate of Joel, and Mark Silverman, who produced it, Debbie Reinisch. A lot of people behind and in front of the camera were all part of their core team, and that was let's take our core team of camera and actors and producer and go out and make this movie. That was really a means to an end. That wasn't what they wanted to necessarily do at that time, but it was something that if they did do another film that was an original and indie for a modest budget, then they could do the big ambitious project that they were hoping to do one day. So they this one came out of them, and yeah, when I read it, it was absolutely, you could feel how special.
You mentioned another one of your favorite films is A Hard Day's Night.
Yeah, well,
that 1964 Beatles film.
Right. I threw that, this list, it was today's list. I don't know that it's tomorrow's list or yesterday's list, but it was what I was, and some of the films, including that one, I rewatched recently. And that movie, growing up when I did, the Beatles and the huge influence they had on me, my generation, and the whole world, you can never, underappreciate or estimate how important they were to the culture and social and music, obviously, and other parts of our lives, from fashion to hairstyle to even dialogue and relationships and the music itself. So, and the way that movie's made, it was so modern, and it kind of it felt like a new language of filmmaking mixed with some other classic, shot in black and white, but it has all kinds of kind of stop motion, raw version animation, and many things about it that were very modern and still are impressive to see and hold up. And it's got this docu-reality feeling, which is very popular today. Yeah, it's a movie that I think is deserving to be on important top lists.
And so modern, and at the same time, there's a lot of Marx Brothers in there.
Yeah. Well, very true.
What I think was so remarkable, I mean, before the movie came out, their status was already mythic, and there were a lot of ways that thing could have gone, but that it was done, and I'm sure Brian Epstein had a hand, and with Richard Lester, to make sure to show the boys in the most, just showing off their uniqueness, the personalities, the spontaneity, the humor, the impertinence. But it was really it was so deft, I thought, that the way Lester pulled that off, really remarkable.
And the opening scene when the Beatles are being chased by all those girls, and one of them, I think it's Ringo, stumbles and falls, and that was not in the script. That really happened, and from that moment, the whole thing becomes fresh. The whole thing becomes, okay, what's the next surprise going to be?
Yeah. Very true.
You mentioned Somebody Up There Likes Me and It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, yeah.
When we asked for a few of your favorites.
Yeah. Those two were just things that seemed to come around, and I'd watch them over and over again, and I'd study Paul Newman and Somebody Up There Likes Me. It was a movie that I think led and inspired Rocky and Raging Bull and boxing films to come. Paul Newman, one of the greats of all time, his relationship with his mom, with his dad, with his girlfriend, with his manager, again, all of that showed different colors, his successes, his failures, the kind of the journey that character is on. And same with It's a Wonderful Life, having a dream, having to maybe change it, possibly even be disappointed by what those changes are at the moment, that you have to go through for family and for other reasons, but how in the end it all works out to be something that you could have never expected or predicted, and was even more special because of it. So I love that list, and I wrote it up for today, and I still
stand by it.
We'll have to see what's on tomorrow's menu, because
It's a Wonderful Life. I suspect that a lot of people have an idea in their head about what that film is like, maybe from seeing it years ago and then hearing the title. But you go back and watch it, and there's so much darkness in there that has to be struggled with, that has to be overcome. And Jimmy Stewart, the most likable man in the world on screen, and when he gets angry, it's really frightening. When he looks around the house and says, "Why do we have to have all these kids?" It's terrifying.
Oh yeah. Well, and also you look at the directors, Frank Capra, for that film, and selecting any one of his movies would be deserving to be on a top list. And same with Kazan, who directed On the Waterfront. These are two of the all-time great Hollywood legends. And then later on, more of my generation of Scorsese and the Beatles, it's a new time. So yeah, I think the list represents both ends of that.
I tend to think sometimes the films we like most are, not to get too psychological, but they are revealing of our own, temperament and our own inner life. The couple of films you selected, they're the stories of, Terry in On the Waterfront and Rocky Graziano, and the characters are, they've had to fight and struggle to overcome and achieve their
Yeah,
vision,
that's right.
achieve their
Terry
dream.
was a boxer as well. That's very true.
Does that describe you a little bit? Of that? I mean, you've had wonderful success, but I'm sure it's been a challenge along the way. And do you identify with that kind of character in a film who has to kind of fight the good fight?
It certainly resonates, and I certainly, have a great respect for it. I've been a lot more, fortunate in my life to not have to fight that, certainly not that way. I had just amazing supportive family and friends along the way, great people who mentored me in the business and took me under their wing early on and taught me and helped me and pulled me along, up the ladder, so to speak, and didn't have to fight that way. I just had to show up and do hard work and love doing it with a great attitude. So very different from some of those characters, all of those characters, and the dark side of things. But we all have to push in order to achieve and get where we want to go. So that comes through hard work.
Yep. So before we break, one little thing I want to do real quick, if you'll indulge me. I want to play a quick little game of Jon Kilik trivia.
Okay.
Here's how it's going to go. There are several wonderful, esteemed actors and actress performers whose very first screen role was in a Jon Kilik production. I'm going to name the movie, and you see if you can tell me who performer is, whose debut performance was in this film. And don't worry if I know the answer, so I'll fill in the blanks if you can't. So in Dead Man Walking.
Jack Black.
No kidding, really? I didn't know that. That wasn't who I was thinking of.
I think it's one of his, if not his first. He plays Sean's brother, and then there's also oh God, I'm blanking on his name, who was the one of the victims of the crime. You got to help me out.
Peter Sarsgaard. Peter Sarsgaard.
Yes, Sarsgaard.
Yeah,
yes.
That was his first film role.
That's right.
Okay, and then in Jungle Fever, an actress whose first
role, Halle Berry.
Yeah, Halle Berry.
Yeah,
her first role is Jungle Fever. And lastly, in Do the Right Thing.
Oh, there's so many. I mean, you might not know them all, but Rosie Perez, Martin Lawrence.
Martin Lawrence is who I was thinking of. I know for sure that was his first screen role. So credit to you for picking some winners.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, many in Do the Right Thing, and many in all of Spike's films. We've pride ourselves on that.
Yeah, beautiful.
And Javier Bardem got his first English language role in Before Night Falls, Julian Schnabel's film.
Playing Ronaldo Arenas.
Exactly.
Yeah, beautiful.
And film. Jeffrey Wright in Basquiat. That was his first feature.
I know he'd been in a few little things, but but that was the real breakout role. I mean, I believe
the brother
to,
from another planet.
No, I
Nope.
went on IMDb just to check and see, to confirm that there were no even small movie parts before appearing in, but yeah, I mean, no question, you put Jeffrey Wright on the map. With Basquiat, which was.
Now Benicio del Toro had acted before, had been in features before Basquiat, but I'm going to go back and look about Jeffrey. I thought he came straight from his Broadway, highly regarded, but
Well,
I'm sure you're right. I'm sure he must have done something,
like little tiny things. So
yeah.
But because it wasn't purely his first screen role, I didn't elect to include him in our Jon Kilik trivia game. So.
Okay.
Dean, anything before we go?
No, I think this is great.
All right. Thank you, Jon Kilik, for being on the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. What a delight to get to know you better, to hear about your esteemed career, and to understand the business and the art and the creativity behind your work. Just fantastic. It's candy for movie fans like us.
It's my pleasure. Always great to tell the stories, share the stories, hopefully inspire film lovers and film students to go out there and make their movies and continue to tell stories. So thank you both for your commitment to this and to keeping that going and your show, and look forward to seeing more episodes.
Wonderful. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. Please subscribe to stay up to date on our newest episodes.